So yesterday was the first test drive. I showed you guys that. I know it wasn't all that exciting, but it's just that, okay, a first test drive. So the thing is, today I took it out for a second test drive. Same exact drive around the block one time. But when I got back today, things are not looking very good. Number one, it was puking coolant right out this port right here. Now, I don't have any antifreeze in the system. I just got water, but it was just, spewing out. So I went digging through my pile and I found my original overflow tank. It's supposed to be mounted right there, but some idiot put the clutch line in the way. So I'm gonna have to rearrange some things here. But it's sitting here loosely is fine for now. As you can see, I've connected it where it goes. So that's gonna take care of our issue right there. Now, as far as the coolant and, it kind of, let's just say overheating. Well, I don't got my cooling fan working just yet. I haven't figured it out yet. In the time being, I think I may end up just hardwiring it to the battery and putting like a temporary switch on it or something, because even a fan running at full speed is better than no fan at all. You get what I'm saying? That was one thing that was leaking upon return of my second test drive. Another thing that was a lot more concerning was, number one, as soon as I got out the car, I noticed there was a loud hissing noise, just like excess pressure build up, a lot of hissing. And then I just watched this whole cavity right here just pull up with oil. And I thought to myself, oh crap, did I just blow the head gasket? And if you look up here, nope, it turns out it blew out the valve cover gasket. It was starting to puke its guts out. All the oil was coming out of there. And then I was driving with this cap on here, right? So the second I pulled this cap off, all this pressure got relieved out of the valve cover. And I'm like, oh, so dumb of me. Basically, there is a ton of crankcase pressure building up inside of here. And from what I read online, it's really normal for an engine like this with, high compression to do this. It needs a catch can. Guys, I did go online and buy a catch can and all this stuff I need to do that. So it's just really stupid on my part. And think about that I had the whole system basically sealed off. And yeah, once it built up all that pressure, it needs to go somewhere. So it's going to find the weakest link, and in most cases it's going to be gaskets like this, and that's exactly why it started to blow out the gasket on the valve cover. And that explains why this engine has been leak free for a very long time, but ever since I got it started, all of a sudden there's a leak on the timing cover side, and now there's this leak right here. I was thinking to myself, like, how are leaks just randomly appearing all of a sudden out of nowhere? And they're not random. What's happening is I did not account for the engine to breathe and relieve all the crankcase pressure, and that's exactly what the engine is doing. It's starting to blow out seals and blow out gasket sealing surfaces because it needs to relieve that pressure. So catch can is going to fix all of that. Alright, so you guys saw the last clip where the tuner was on the laptop doing his thing, right? He's controlling it remotely. When we started this morning, the first thing he wanted to do was set base timing. So yesterday he actually sent me out to Harbor Freight, $30 timing light. So I picked up this one. It works well. We went through that this morning. We set the base timing. He said all of that is good now, okay? But we still have an issue where the engine won't go past 2,000 RPM. So that was a bit of a head scratcher, right? And then I told him that I noticed that the TPS, the throttle position sensor, with the key on, engine off, it would read properly. If I hit the accelerator pedal, it goes up on the laptop. I could see it moving. But the second you start the engine, the laptop, the TPS sensor is reading 0 at all times. So he went through a calibration process, and now the TPS is working properly when the engine is running. So that's good too. Oil pressure. So the oil pressure sensor, that one right there, still not reading correctly. Sometimes it reads 90, sometimes it reads 150. It'll bounce back between them, but most times it's stuck on 150 PSI. So I don't know what's going on with that just yet. He's looking at the tune. Initially, he said everything looks fine. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to drive this car around the block. Now, keep in mind, it's not tuned for like max horsepower or anything. The tune is just like, based off of what I'm seeing, you should be able to take this car around the block and it should drive normal. You get what I'm saying? But that's not the case. Can't go over 2,000 RPM, which is like 5 miles per hour. So something's definitely not right. And then he did notice that he said the VTC target does not match actual. So that's an issue right there, right? Despite the roadblocks for tuning, I decided to throw in the towel, and I told the guy, you know what, let's hold off on this. And I'm gonna have to get back in contact with you later on in the future, because guys, we are having a noise. There is a noise going on inside this engine, and it's not a noise that just developed like during, you know, the tuning session or anything. No, this noise has always been there since like the first time I started this engine. I've always heard it, and yes, I was concerned with it, but I always just chalked it up to be like, oh, it's just because the engine is running so inefficient. You know, maybe timing's not dead on with, you know, as far as like ignition timing, you know, with the software. So I was like, you know what, once it starts to get tuned, that noise will go away. Guys, it has not gone away. In fact, if anything, it's getting worse. It's real concerning now. And I got too much money and time invested in things to just keep trying to run it. Oh, hope for the best. No, I'm not trying to destroy my engine. But the fact of the matter is, who knows, I may have caused already significant damage inside this engine, because this noise does not sound good. So much that I don't even want to try to replicate for you guys, but I can easily. If I were to start up this engine within 30 seconds. Now, here's the thing. The noise isn't always there, but it is frequently happening, if that makes any sense. Okay, so it's not constant. It's not like ding, 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 like the noise is always known. It's just like it'll happen like after the first 30 seconds of idling, you will get this noise, and then it'll go away, and then it'll sometimes happen like every 5 seconds apart, and you're probably wondering, well, what's the noise? You know, how bad is the noise? The best way I could describe this noise is if you grab a nut. You know, I got one right here. Grab a nut, right? Throw it in the inside of your engine while the engine is running as hard as you can. Just throw it as hard as you can while everything is running. That's what it sounds like. You know what? I could go ahead and replicate the sound. I got a piece of metal right there. Did you hear that? That's exactly what this thing sounds like. Sometimes it'll happen after 30 seconds of idling. Sometimes it'll happen every 5 seconds. And that's 100% what it sounds like. Just like that. And just as a point of reference, I had my neighbor come over and I told him, hey, listen to this sound. And he is not a car guy at all. Okay, knows nothing about cars. I turned on the engine. It was running for like 20, maybe 30 seconds. As soon as that noise happened for the first time, he was like, whoa, turn it off, turn the engine off, turn it off. So guys, that's how bad the noise sounds, that someone who is not even a car guy hears that noise, and you don't got to be a car guy to know that's not normal. Something is not right. So this is why I pulled the plug on tuning, because I'm like, you know what, there's no point in tuning. There is something going on inside this engine, and I have to get down to the bottom of this. So I'm going to go ahead and push the car back into its spot where it was previously. I don't even want to run the engine anymore. With my luck, I've already caused all kinds of damage. So, yep, that's where we're at, guys. Sorry for the bad news. I know it's a bummer. Trust me, I am #1 person who is bummed out about this. So something like this, you want to start easy, right? So yesterday, I actually pulled off the valve cover because it's the easiest thing to inspect. And guys, I did not find anything. Everything looked perfect underneath there. Everything was tight. There wasn't any foreign object inside of there. So I just went ahead and put the valve cover back on. But the second place I want to draw my attention to is behind the timing cover. So that's what I'm going after first. And we got to keep in mind, the tuner did say that the VTC target isn't matching actual. So that's why I want to start with getting this timing cover off. And the more that I look at it, I thought there was like no space at all. But, you know, upon closer inspection, guys, there's plenty of space here. I've worked with a lot less on cars, okay? So here's where I am so far. And everything looks pretty normal. I haven't seen anything that jumps out at me. I even turned the crank with a ratchet. It turns over nice and smooth. The spark plugs are removed. At the moment, I'm draining the water out the system because I need to get this hose out of the way. So that's why I'm doing that. There goes the upper half of the timing cover. And I'm looking for signs of like something hitting it. You know what I mean? Because we're trying to identify what this noise is. And I don't see anything inside here. Everything looks perfectly normal. This little markings that you see over here on the edge, that was just me prying on the cover to get it off, because of course this thing is glued on. So I got the lower timing cover off, and guys, I'm not seeing anything. So took this off and it was on the correct way. It says outside. Everything seems nice and tight. I don't see anything loose. I don't see anything flopping around that would cause, you know, something to sound like metal hitting metal. I don't know, guys, real bummer. I mean, it's a good thing that I don't see anything wrong, but at the same time it's a bad thing because that means I haven't found a problem yet. Alright, so I decided to connect the power probe and crank the engine over using a starter to see if I could hear anything, and everything sounds normal under cranking, but without the timing cover on, it started puking oil out of here. And as soon as that oil started coming out, I'm like, that oil looks suspiciously flaky. Oh, don't get me wrong, guys, this pan was dirty. It had crap in it before I started doing this, right? But do you guys see that? I'm trying to get this to focus. There it goes. That's what came out the engine. Alright, so I just cranked the engine with the starter again, and I grabbed a sample from that port right there. So here was our oil sample. Hopefully you guys can see all that. Yeah, that's picking up pretty well. And I got a magnet right here, and if I do this, the particles don't seem to want to follow the magnet. Really sucks the motivation out of you, you know what I mean? I thought I was so close, and yet I was actually further from the finish line than I thought. So now I have to weigh out my options, see what I'm going to do. So I cleaned out a pan. You can see it's pretty dang clean. So that means everything that we get in this pan is just from the engine alone. Well, it looks pretty clean. It should. The K-tuned drain plug does have a magnet on it, so we'll take a closer look at that later on. But for now, let's just continue to look at the oil coming out. So far so good. I'm not seeing any chunks of anything. I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you think this is normal for a completely fresh build to have some like very fine like shimmer in the oil, glitter if you will? Do you think this warrants a complete teardown? I don't know, guys. I need your opinion. I feel like I'm going to end up tearing this whole engine apart anyway. But let me know what your opinion is. So the good news is, you know, usually if there's chunks of something in oil, like the first bit of oil that comes out, it would just look like regular oil, and towards the end is where all the nastiness or the chunks comes out, because they tend to settle at the bottom. And you can see we're just about done here, and no chunks came out, nothing. It just looks like relatively new oil because it is. Yeah, this doesn't look like a lot of anything. It's first of all, it's a very small amount. There's no chunks or nothing. It's just like a very fine. So everything that was on that magnet, I wiped it on this piece of paper towel right here, and that's everything that was there. Like, you can't even feel it. A very small amount, very minor. Like a paste, like real thin. It's barely even noticeable on a napkin. And inside the oil, I'm sure you guys can see that with the light. But again, no chunks of anything came out. Just this glitter in the oil. And I guess that's a good sign, right? We're not seeing big chunks of anything come out. You know, the whole engine has been overhauled. Is this normal for a first oil change? You get what I'm saying? We came in here because of a noise. So even though we're seeing all of this going on, I still haven't found what's causing this noise, which is the most concerning part. Alright guys, so it's a few hours later, and I just can't rest. This thing is just on my mind, just eating at me, you know what I mean? So I was doing some research on people who, you know, do a fresh, complete engine build and what their very first oil drain looks like. And from what I'm hearing, this is normal. That this is the type of stuff that you would see when you first drain the oil out of a fresh build. as long as you don't see any like big metal chunks or stuff like that, they say this is normal. And honestly, I haven't seen a single chunk come out this thing. But once the actual pan comes off the bottom, we'll get more information. But here's the thing, guys. I decided to just tear apart this entire engine. I mean, everything down to the pistons are coming out. You get what I'm saying? I want to go over everything with a fine tooth comb and just look over everything very meticulously the best I can, because even if I take everything apart and I'm like, I didn't find anything, oh well, I guess we're just gonna put it back together. I get that peace of mind knowing that all the work I did is fine, and you know, it was nothing on my end. As you can see, in a short period of time, I made some decent progress. I've been at it for about an hour. I removed the engine harness and tucked it up out of the way. Same thing with the shift cables, same thing with the charge harness. So the grounds and the power cables are out of the way. One oversight, I planned on removing the slave cylinder from here and from here and just tuck the whole system out of the way so that I don't gotta open it, lose brake fluid, and you know, have to rebleed the system again. But this is the oversight. This line is trapped inside of here and it's welded onto the mount. So either way, I'm gonna have to open up the system, so I'll probably just do it right here. I'm gonna have to address this in the future, because on a factory K-series, this bracket is actually bolted down to the engine mount. It's not welded. So essentially you would unbolt from here, unbolt from this bracket and right here, and you can move the whole entire system out of the way without opening up the system, if that makes any sense. So in the future, I will address this and find a way to fix that issue. For now, I'll open up the line, not a big deal. Everything is up here. I tried to keep as many things together as possible. You can see the entire intake manifold with the rail, injectors, all of this stuff stuck together. And I even started like bagging and tagging everything so that, you know, I don't lose track of anything and everything's labeled. So yeah, pretty good progress for just like an hour or so worth of work. Not too bad. As you can see, I got the camshafts off and the whole entire rocker assembly. The camshafts are right here and they are in perfect condition, guys. No scoring, no marks on them, nothing. So that's good to see. Now initially I thought I found my problem right here in the rocker arm assembly. I thought that I assembled it wrong, but I was just confused for a few minutes. Because upon closer inspection, no, everything here was correct. Because you could see this is the intake side. You can see the little spring-loaded pin is on the right side. And then on this side, I had the spring-loaded pin on the left side. So I thought I got this side wrong on the exhaust side. I thought I put the pins in wrong, but really it's almost impossible to do that if you think about it and you look at where the oil ports are. So my theory on you know, me messing up the rocker arm assembly, and that's what was causing our noise, that doesn't hold any water. So I was wrong on that. I got a little bit too excited for nothing. I thought I finally figured out the issue, but I was wrong. So I have to keep digging into this, unfortunately. But everything looks perfect. All the rollers feel nice and smooth. None of the bearings are destroyed. So I went over all of them. Everything seems to be just fine here. I don't see any crazy scoring on any of the journals. All of that looks fine. Now, one thing I do want to address before I put all this stuff back together is look at the gasket for the intake manifold. So when I took this off of the car and you push up the gasket as far as it'll go, kind of right there, look how much that covers that fuel injector. That's crazy, right? And before I took all of this apart, I actually went into the intake manifold with my borescope when I was looking for, see if I could figure out what's going on here. You could actually see from the inside with the camera, and I'll show you guys a picture of it, of how much this gasket interrupts the flow of air. Look how much that sticks up inside of there. That's crazy. And it's like the fuel injector, the fuel would actually hit the gasket and then fall down. You get what I'm saying? That's crazy right there. So I'm gonna have to modify the gasket to suit the intake manifold. Looking at the top of the cylinder head, I'm not noticing anything that stands out. Like, I don't see a broken spring. You can see these are dual springs, so I'm not noticing like any of the springs broken. So I'm just looking over everything. But it looks nice and clean in here. I don't see any like metal shavings, nothing. As you can see, the cylinder head is off. Everything's coming apart pretty easy, guys, not gonna lie. You can see the pistons, and guys, I did not wipe them down. That's how clean everything is. Of course, the engine has like less than 30 minutes of runtime on it. If you look at the bores, see, it looks nice inside of there. Same thing over here. Let's go ahead and rotate the engine so we can look at the two center bores. Alright. Same thing, the bores look real good. Don't see any issues. And here was the cylinder head. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the valves just to check the springs. I don't see any of them broken, but guys, we're in it this deep. Might as well just take the whole thing apart 100%. And look at this side. Look how perfect everything looks. All four cylinders have the same exact color. I don't see anything weird going on here. You can see it has like a golden brown tint. Same exact color on all four cylinders. The cylinder head resurface looks super nice. Everything looks real good. The head gasket, of course, looks perfect when it came off. Let me get you guys a shot inside from the back of the valves. My worst fear is that I take everything apart and I don't find anything wrong. At that point, what do? You know what I mean? A bunch of wasted time, wasted money and effort. My timing chain, I got it off of Temu. No, I'm just kidding. But I did get it off of Amazon. And even though I bought a OEM Honda part, we all know it's super easy to get fake parts on Amazon, right? So I went ahead and ordered a new timing chain and a modified crank sprocket for the timing chain from Drag Cartel. At least I know I'm getting quality parts, and the timing chain is a heavy duty timing chain, okay? So we're gonna be getting rid of this timing chain and the crankshaft sprocket when it's time to go back together. All right guys, so we got the block out of the car and the transmission. My cousin helped me do that today. He's looking at the pressure plate. The flywheel is right here. The springs are all nice and tight. Don't really see any damage to anything. My cousin did notice that inside of here, if you look at those castings all the way around, they all look consistent, except for one of them right there. It looked like some of the casting fell off. I don't know. See, but even if that little chunk did fall off, that would be like a one-time noise. I would imagine it would fall off, make whatever noise it's gonna make, and then get disintegrated and, you know, fall out the system somehow. But I don't see any damage to the pressure plate. The clutch looks real good. Don't see any damage to it. The springs nice and tight, nothing's loose. On the flywheel side here, we do have a little bit of a hot spot, but that's the only spot. But the thing is, I don't see any damage, okay? All the bolts, you can see everything is still torqued down. Nothing has moved at all from where I marked it. So far we are this deep into it. The whole engine is almost fully taken apart. Of course, I'm going to take the oil pan off, take the pistons out, but so far no signs of what could be causing this noise. All right, so I just got the flywheel off, and you can see it, the Fidanza flywheel has all these bolts, and guys, they are all in place. None of them have backed out, none of them are loose or nothing. Even these that hold on, like the ring gear, no issues here with the flywheel. Looking at the engine here, all the bolts are in place. Nothing is out of the ordinary. Brand new seal, not leaking. Everything looks great. So, but I did get a new seal for that. Basically, I bought every single seal for this engine is going to get replaced. But yeah. So the final thing is, I'm going to go ahead, put the block on a engine stand. We'll turn it over, and the next thing I want to get off is the oil pan. As you can see, my cousin and I managed to get the block up on the engine stand. So I know I haven't been able to provide an actual audio clip of this noise happening for you guys, because I don't ever remember recording it when it was making a noise. But in my last CRX video, which I just dropped today, by the way, at the very end of that video, when I started the CRX, okay, the camera was set back, I don't know, maybe like 10 to 15 feet. And you could hear it when I first started the engine. So if you're one of those eagle-eared viewers, you may have noticed the loud tick that it made when the engine first started. Okay, so I'll put that clip in here so you guys can hear it. So it was a pretty distinct like knocking or tapping noise. I'm sure you guys can hear it, okay? And keep in mind, the camera was like 15 feet back and you could still hear it. If you're standing right next to the car when it happens, it's very loud. And the thing about it is there's no consistency. Sometimes it's louder than others. Sometimes it happens randomly. Sometimes it's consistent, like it has a rhythm, but there's no actual cadence to it. For example, think about this. The connecting rod goes up and down, right? Let's just say the bolts or one of the bolts for the connecting rod cap, let's just say it's loose, right? I'm just throwing out hypothetically speaking, okay? Let's just say it's loose, sticking out a little bit. So as that connecting rod is spinning around the crankshaft and it comes in contact with the block, well, you're going to constantly hear that noise every time it comes around. And the more you raise RPM, the faster it's going to get. It's going to have that cadence, right? There's a rhythm. Well, this doesn't have no rhythm. It's just random at what it does. The next thing is I want to flip it over and tear off the oil pan. You know what? In fact, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tear off the oil pan while it's sitting upright like this. Because if there is anything in the oil pan, I want to see what's in there. I don't want to turn it over and have whatever potential stuff might be in there fall into the block or behind the pistons, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to remove the oil pan like this and just pull it down. One thing I'm kind of bummed out about, guys, and I just realized this like an hour ago, is it just kind of pisses me off. Dented the fender. I know it's hard to see. Pisses me off because this was a OEM original fender for this car, and honestly the fender was in perfect condition. There wasn't a single dent on it, and this is the way we pulled the engine out through the side. So I did notice that the engine hoist was getting really close right here, but I didn't notice that it was pushing up against the fender this hard and it dented it in. And it's funny because my wife was like, what do you care? Look at the rest of the car. It's all dented and it has rust everywhere. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? What was that movie with Jim Carrey? Well, he's like, there's a scratch on my car. And the guy's like, what scratch? And he's like, right here. Point is, it's a turd, but that doesn't mean add to the turdness of the car. You get what I'm saying? I don't even want to think about it, guys. Alright, so here I am removing the alternator, and I came across the very first thing that is loose. Basically, you can see the two nuts back here. I have not touched them yet, and as you can see, I'm able to rock this back and forth. So even though I found the first two nuts on this whole entire thing that are loose, I don't think this is the cause of the noise. Alright, so the pan is off, and it's pretty much the same exact thing that we saw when we drained the oil. There is some slightly larger chunks inside of here. Hopefully you guys can see them going down. I don't know what that is though. Let's see. I got a magnet right here. I can see like one piece right there. Let's see if it's attracted to the magnet, and no, it's not. Nothing here is attracted to the magnet. The bigger pieces that we see, I tried to like grab one with my finger and it just like disintegrated in my hand, meaning it's not solid enough for me to actually feel it. You can see more of it down there. And this white stuff at the bottom that looks like the paint's coming off the pan, that is not the paint coming off the pan. That is simply just this stuff. As you can see, I could wipe it away. This white stuff, I can tell you what this is right now. This is moisture building up in the engine. Remember, I built this engine a long time ago, and it's been sitting, you know, changing temperatures with winter, summer. Humidity builds up inside the engine. Condensation happens, and it starts mixing with the oil. So that's like light water. I mean, nothing crazy, but it's enough to put moisture into the oil. So that's what some of that little bit of white milky stuff is. But there's no big chunks in here, nothing. So I don't know, you guys can make what you want of that. You know, all of this stuff could be just stuff that's collected from the machining of the block, and it's finally all coming out with the first like real oil that's been running through the engine for the first time. So with the oil pump, I did go ahead and check all of these 10 mil bolts over here. Everything's tight. I have not found anything loose on this build, minus the 2 bolts on the bottom of the alternator that I pointed out earlier. But as far as inside the engine, I haven't found a single bolt that's loose. Okay, you can see there is like this baffle plate, right? And you can see with the connecting rod at its lowest point, that's how close the bolts for the connecting rod come to that plate. Now if I rotate the engine over, they don't actually touch, of course, because that would be a big problem, but you can see they do get really close. And I don't think that's an issue, because I mean, pretty much almost every Honda engine has this baffle plate on the bottom, and nobody else seems to have issues with it. So, and just rotating the engine over by hand, of course, nothing's making contact. I don't hear any weird noises. The final thing I have to do is pull out the pistons and check the rings. But here's something to think about: is there was no compression loss, there was no misfires. You hear what I'm saying? If we blew out a piston ring, I would imagine there would be catastrophic damage. You would see damage on the cylinder walls. It would start to create a misfire, and there was none of that going on. So I'm suspecting that when I remove the pistons and the piston rings, I'm suspecting everything's going to be fine there. And like I showed you guys before, the bores look perfect. There's no damage on any of these bores. So there goes the oil pump. I still have to open it up, look inside, see if anything weird is going on. And just so you guys know, I'm actually taking everything apart with a small ratchet. The reason why I don't want to use an impact gun is because, let's just say I left one of the bolts for the baffle that covers the whole crankshaft. If I left one of them loose and I'm using an impact gun just zipping everything off, I won't know that I left it loose. Whereas if I use my small ratchet and I go to turn it and the bolt just easily comes out, then I know I left it loose to begin with. And so far I haven't found anything that's loose. Here goes a piston from cylinder number 1. All the rings look perfect. None of them are seized or anything like that. You can see the bearings for the connector rod. Guys, this bearing looks damn near perfect. I mean, are you seeing anything? You get what I'm saying? Over here I see like a small scratch, like in the shape of a Z. You see it? I don't think that's wear. That's most likely me when I was installing it, but that is not gonna cause the noise that we have. I can't even feel this with my fingernail. So, but still, besides that little scratch right there, looks perfect. The piston looks perfect. There's no play in the wrist pin right here with the connecting rod. I can't, yeah, it slides side to side, that's normal, but like zero slop whatsoever, just dead solid. So that's good. Look at the crank over here, and again, the surface looks real good. No scratches or anything, nice and smooth. Let's go ahead and look at the bore, and everything just looks perfect, guys. It's crazy to think that I just tore apart this whole engine, and this thing hasn't even ran long enough to get rid of the name right there on top of the piston. Still perfectly intact. Crazy. So I took apart the oil pump, and I'm not seeing anything crazy inside of here. I don't see chunks of anything. On this side, I don't see any crazy scoring or gouging or nothing. Definitely can't feel anything with my fingernail, and I'm touching this spot because that's where this thing is spinning against. So I am going to, for the pickup right here, if we look inside of here, like I said last time, I don't see anything, but if you wanted to nitpick, I do kind of see something. You could see some of like the little squares look like they're covered up. From the inside over here, you can't see much. If you're wondering, what is that stuff, right? What's the little bit of stuff that's on that pickup screen? And what's the silver stuff inside the oil pan? I know exactly what that is. It's the freaking paint. When this block went to the machine shop and they bored out the cylinders, they also went ahead and painted the block, and it just looked like a straight up rattle can paint job. Well, guess what? They also painted the inside of the timing cover. You could even see the paint right here. You see that black mark? Look what happens if I go like this with my fingernail. See it coming off? There we go. Oh, that looks familiar, doesn't it? The freaking spray paint that the machine shop painted the block with is all the silver stuff inside of here. I believe that's what that is. Because I see no signs of this engine eating itself up, like no metal debris. None of that stuff in there feels like metal. You get what I'm saying? That's what that silver stuff is. And when I was showing you guys, when it still had oil in it, and I just kind of wiped my finger across the bottom of this pan, because it looked, you know, like white or metallic-y. That's exactly what this crap is, guys. They painted the entire block with spray paint. Oh, you could see it. And it's actually just coming off. So it's just, it's crazy, right? And there goes more of it coming off on my finger. So that explains that in the oil pan. So that means now the stuff on the outside, I'm not worried. Obviously, it's the outside. But the next time this engine goes back together, I'm going to make sure I scrub everything that's going to be on the inside of the timing cover. Make sure none of that paint crap ends up inside the engine again. So I got all the pistons out, and they all look really good for the most part. Now, if you look closely on cylinders 2 and 3, on the bearing, it does look like some of that metallic stuff is embedded into the bearing. I can't really feel it with my fingernail. I guess you can. I think I can feel something. But let me get the, let me change to the macro on my camera and see if I can get you guys a close-up shot. If you look closely, you can see the little specks, and that stuff is embedded into the bearing. And I think that might be the paint that I just showed you guys that's on the block. Obviously, it's flowing through all the oil, goes through all the journals, and when it gets smashed between the bearing and the crank, well, the bearing on the connecting rod is a softer metal, so whatever contaminants are in there, it gets embedded into these bearings right here. Over here on the crank, all these surfaces look perfect. They're just dirty from me touching them, but they look perfect. They feel perfect. No scratches, no gouges, nothing. As you can see, I got the crank removed. There it goes right there, and like I showed you before, all the journals look perfect. Here goes all the bearings for the crank, and guys, I'm not gonna lie, they look really nice. Right at the end right here, there's some very light scuffing, very minor. I can't feel it with my fingernail, and you just got to get it at the right light angle just to actually see anything. But guys, I mean, that's absolutely nothing. On this side, the bearings, same exact thing. They all look perfect. And here goes our 2 thrust washers. Both of them are still in place. I would argue that these bearings for the crank look so nice that honestly, guys, I would have no issue running these bearings again. They look really good to me. The ones on the connecting rods, I'm probably going to change them out. The nice thing is, I remember when I took this block to the machine shop and they measured everything. Now, when I measured it, it was just kind of verifying what they did. But the thing is, they told me that after their measurements, everything checks out, that there's no reason why this thing needs any other type of bearings besides standard size. So the bearings for the crank and the connecting rods are all standard size bearings, nothing special, no special order type of bearings. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and order a new set of bearings for the connecting rods, only because we've seen that little bit of material that's embedded into the bearing on like connecting rods number 2 and 3. So I'm not gonna risk that, you know what I mean? I'll go ahead and change out those bearings. But for the crank, guys, I think I'm gonna run with these same bearings. They look really nice. So I'm gonna go ahead and put out this video like this, and I'm gonna let you guys look at the grand scope of things. Who knows, maybe there's something I missed. Give me your opinion. There's a lot of people in my comment section who know a lot about these Hondas, a lot more than I do, okay? So maybe there's something overlooking. If there's some great information, you can give me at least something to check. Let me know. I'll go ahead and check it. Once the oil heats up and it starts to break down that paint, that's what's getting mixed into the oil. And this is the exact color, look at that, the exact color of crap that we found at the bottom of the oil pan.